Hello duelists, and welcome to another episode of the Road to Regionals. In this series, I'm going to go from an average duelist to topping a regional in this year 2026. We've had a lot happen since our first episode, and I can't wait to take you through it. So let's go. We left episode 1 with 4 potential decks to take us on this road to regionals. I managed to narrow that down to 2, and I'm ready to talk you through my final decision. In the meantime, I went out and gathered some data, and I did something crazy. I took the Call of the Haunted deck to 2 locals, and here's how it went. So you're probably asking, how can a zombie pile deck perform in 2026? My answer to you is a complicated one, so let's break it down. I'll start with the positive. First and foremost, the deck is undoubtedly strong. I found when I was able to combo off, I could build a board of really strong and awkward interactions. Cards like the Undying Legion allow you to use an opponent's monster as a material from either the grave or face up attack position on the field. This can shut down combos through taking a key combo piece out of the graveyard or absorbing a key monster before they can activate its effect. Something that had been really useful. Other cards that really stuck out to me was Wallow, a really strong game finisher, and led to me leading a charge with an army of zombies with attack boosts. Ready to take my opponent down in the battle phase. The main strength here is through running such a concise engine, I was able to run a massive pile of hand traps. Around 20, most opponents were not capable of dealing with this, particularly all different ones. Negation, stopping searches, stopping monsters coming out of the Off the back of that, however, 1 or 2 hand traps and a Fua, it was a wrap, because I'm going to barrage my opponent with hand trap after hand trap. The thing that I really struggled with this deck is its brittle nature. So by running so many hand traps, I would often find myself with 1 or maybe 2 starters, and there's some quite clear choke points in the deck. If I led with one of my non-main starters, aka Stare or Ectoplasmic Fortification, your opponent could easily stop it with an Ash, and stopping that search can make things really challenging if I didn't have another extender in hand. I often was left with a hand. This deck, however, was Ghost Bell.
This is the end of the mystery. Well, if it isn't our old friend.
Now let's be real. I probably could have played better. I'm relatively new to the deck, and I was still learning some of the interactions. However, with quite a short deadline and 2 regionals coming up in the month of April, I've come to my final decision that I simply don't have the time to get to the level I need to get to with this deck to top either of them. So because of that, we're going to stick to what we know and go back to our boys, the Canine Mitsurugi deck. So with that in mind and our key engines now in place, let's talk a little bit about non-engine and how we can approach the current meta and finally top that regional. My Canine Mitsurugi deck has carried me through a few tournaments, a couple of locals wins, and I think I can take it a little bit further. What I do need to really refine is understanding more about the current meta and how it can shape my non-engine choices. What we're going to cover off today is a bit on hand traps and other non-engine that we can use to really perfect this deck before we take it to the upcoming regionals. I've got a Rarity 5 launch event and a few more locals to get the practice in and get myself feeling good. So let's break down what non-engine I'll likely be playing. With the nature of running 2 moderate sized engines in the deck, we don't have a lot of space for non-engine, so we need to be super deliberate and make every single card in this deck a banger.
My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba.
Something that really helped me advance in my approach to deck building and ultimately starting to win at Yu-Gi-Oh! Is trying to make every card count. I don't want to have anything dead in my hand, and so I need to be super careful on what I'm picking. So with that in mind, we've maybe got about 12 places for non-engine in this deck, so we need to make every single one count. There are 2 unquestionable places in this deck, first of which is 3 copies of Mulcharmy Fuwalos. Now this card has been all over the meta since it launched. If you don't know, once it resolves, it's essentially a max C to anything your opponent summons from deck or extra deck. This means it can shut off a lot of decks, and for those that want to try and play through, you're going to come back with a massively stocked hand, and they're going to have a hard time trying to beat you. Second, and in that same vein, is Ash Blossom. Now, I'll try to be a bit edgy a couple times and stop playing it.
I want to kill my mom! I want to kill my dad!
Now, when it comes to Ash Blossom, there's a lot of key plays to be made. I think it's really useful to Ash something like a Crocea. We're seeing branded, which means you've got Ash the branded fusion, and there's a lot of strong interactions that you don't want your opponent gaining advantage with. So Ash Blossom does a lot of work there. My next 2 slots took a little more figuring out, and coming away from monster hand traps, the next thing I'm going to give a try is Imperm. Something that's fell out of favour a little bit. I still think targeted negation can do a lot here, and even drawing on turn 0 and using an Imperm to stop something like an Arthalion can be really useful. The last card in my main deck that I want to rant and rave about is Forbidden Droplet. Now, I've loved Forbidden Droplet this year. It's been in and out of a few different decks I've ran, but at the moment I find it so useful, both as a board breaker, but also its ability to help you dodge targeted negation or destruction. So when your opponent might use something like one of the Draco Tail traps to negate your spell, you're able to send it to the grave and get additional value, negating one of your opponent's monsters, but also making sure your spell card resolves. For that reason, I'm including these 4 key cards as my 12 pieces of non-engine. Now, let's talk a bit about side decking. So, what I've always seen side decks are, especially as I've kind of improved a bit as a player, they've gone from where I would normally stuff in as many go second cards as I could find, to now being a chance to put in some really specific cards for meta matchups. I've ran things like Mulcharmy Purulia, while not quite useful enough to go in my main deck, is incredibly strong against some key matchups that I can expect, like Radiant Typhoon and VSK9. I'd also like to really own in on things like Retaliating C. This is especially useful for the matchup against Draco Tail, but can also have some fringe uses for any deck essentially that relies on the graveyard and uses a spell card to summon. Broadening out, we can also look at what were former staples, things like Droll and Lockbird, which is now at 2, can shut down a lot of decks. It can really stop awkward hands from Radiant Typhoon where they're not able to play in draw phase and then have to start to build a board in their main phase and beyond, and can absolutely shut down things like Mitsurugi or any deck that has to search a lot. A few other options that I've been bouncing around and considering are things like Lava Golem.
Just what I needed!
I'm somewhat terrified of facing Lunalight or any other sort of unaffected Towers monsters, and having an easy out here beyond the in-engine kaiju that we see through the Mitsurugi cards is always pretty useful. I think there's some good plays to be made and a case to be done of siding out Noroi and putting that in, because without that you don't really need your normal summon unless you've got a really awkward hand in this deck. So I'm willing to take the risk and try out Lava Golem and see how that looks to perform. Next episode, we're going to talk about making plays themselves. What I'm going to do is sit down and feedback how some of my locals experiences have gone as I look to get the reps in. I'm going to talk about some key interactions against some of our meta challengers that we expect to face, focusing on how we can beat Dracotel, Radiant Typhoon, and I might throw in a mystery one to keep you guessing. Leave a comment below of something else that you might want to see me build a strategy out for. Thank you everyone for watching another episode on the road to regionals. If you're enjoying this series, please leave a like. If you've got any last minute tips or anything you want me to consider to get me to where I want to be on this path, please leave a little comment below. Please go out, share, like and subscribe.
So that's how it ends, huh?